Hello, welcome back. Today is Sunday, the third day of Kislev, and we continue in the Tanya, the Kuntres Acharon, the last part of the Tanya. We are holding in the middle of the fourth essay. Once again, let's begin with tzedakah. Tzedakah, shemekareves es hageula. Make sure to give tzedakah at home. So, in this essay, the Alter Rebbe discusses the refinement of the world, the job that we have. We were brought to this world is to refine the world. And we mentioned on Friday that you have the three general areas, how we are refining the godly sparks, elevating the godly sparks in this world. We have through the Torah, through prayer, and through mitzvahs, doing good deeds. And he began by explaining that there is something unique, something special by the way when we work to serve Hashem through prayer, the refinement of the godly sparks is much more powerful in a sense. And he says, what the Arizal says, that in this day and age, the main focus should be on prayer. And he says, what is unique about prayer compared to the other two types, Torah study and mitzvahs? He says, when you pray, you actually see the effect of God in this physical world. Meaning, if God forbid this person is sick, you pray to Hashem, you pray from the depth of the heart, and things change, and the person gets well. You see the actual change in this physical world. If a person has problems at work, needs parnasa, and he prays to Hashem, and things change. So we see that the prayer has a literal effect in this world. And unlike the mitzvahs is, the mitzvahs affects physical things as well. You do the mitzvahs with physical objects. You pray with physical parchment. That for the tefillin, you take parchment, you make tefillin, but you do not see the actual change in the physical object. You can't tell that the physical object became holy. You know it, and you're gonna have so much deep respect for the tefillin. You're gonna kiss it. It's holy, but you don't actually see it with your eyes. There's a story once told with the Rebbe once mentioned that there was, back in Russia, there was a goy that stole a pair of tefillin from a Jew. He didn't know what it was, and the police got up to him, and they saw the straps, the tefillin in his hands. They told him, "You stole it from the Jew," and he said, "No, I didn't steal it from the Jew. I'm a shoemaker myself." In Russian, the Rebbe said, "Ya sam saparzhnik." And because you don't see the tefillin, you don't see the holiness in the physical tefillin. But by prayer, on the other hand, you do see the change. And today, now the Rebbe goes on to explain, he's going to say that there is something all unique about the mitzvahs compared to prayer. And it's so before we get there, we need to understand also the prayer that was given much focus by the Hasidim, by the Baal Shem Tov, by the Alter Rebbe, because prayer is something that really changes the person from within. Prayer is something that reaches deep into the person. It's not just, coming, saying, I have a shopping list to Hashem and say, I need this, and this. Prayer is something that you connect, and you pray to Hashem that you want to be connected with Hashem. Prayer is something that among Hasidim, sometimes you would I saw myself, Hasidim sitting on Shabbos afternoon under a talus, covered with a talus, and they pray and they cry. What are you crying for? What do they cry for? it is a very deep emotional experience that a person wants to, through prayer, reach a connection to go out of himself and connect to something deeper, something real, something truth. This is the prayer. And that is why the prayer, says the Alter Rebbe, really connects and elevates the deepest, the highest sparks of godliness that fell in the lowest places and elevates them. But as we mentioned, in this part of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe also clarifies things which seem to be contradictory in different places. So on Friday, we mentioned about the mitzvahs compared to the prayer, that a mitzvahs, he says they are rooted in the 10 attributes of Zah. 10 attributes of the emotional, in the 10 attributes, which is in Zah. And here, Alter Rebbe goes to say that we find in different places that it seems to be contradictory, saying that the mitzvahs are rooted in different areas. He's using Kabbalistic terms, but we're going to try to explain as much as possible. So we're going to start now. Yesterday's class, that it was Shabbos, and then we're going to go on to today's lesson. So let's look inside. So this is the lesson for Shabbos, the second day of Kislev. Says the Alter Rebbe, והנה במוקם אחד כוסב שרמח מצווי ססי הם בהי חסדים. Now in one source, it is written that the 248 positive commandments are rooted in the 5 attributes of kindness of Zah. 5 attributes of kindness, meaning, we know, again, you have the 4 different worlds. Okay, Atzilus is the world of emanation. Within Atzilus, there is the 10 attributes. There is the intellectual attributes and 7 emotive attributes. But the main attributes, the emotive attributes, are the 5 from Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, and Hod. Those are the main ones. Within those, there is the Chesed of every. There is, like we say by the counting of the Omer, we say you have the Chesed of Chesed, you have Gvura of Chesed, which means you have the kindness of kindness, you have kindness, the severity within kindness. So again, we're not going to go into the explanation of all of this now, that's not the place. But in any case, it says one place we find that it says that the 248 positive mitzvahs are rooted in the 5 kindness of Zah of Atzilus. For every positive command serves as a vessel to receive an expression of the kindly attributes and calling forth of divinity. Because in general, you have chesed, this kindness is about giving. Gevura is the attribute of restricting. So it says that the positive commandments are connected with the attributes of the giving, because this is about releasing and revealing godly energy. And the negative commandments are connected with the 5 gevuras, the 5 restrictive attributes. And the 365 prohibitions are rooted in the 5 attributes of severity of Zah of Atzilus. So that's one, so it's different than what we learned. And yet there's a third place that it says, where is the root of all of the mitzvahs? He says there's one place. He calls it the whiteness. And we'll soon explain. So elsewhere it is written that there are 613 paths corresponding to the 613 mitzvahs that derive from one path. What is the one path? He says, Shehu lavnunis v'chulu, which is the lavnunis, the benevolent, pristine whiteness of the supernal Keter. The root of everything is Keter. Keter, he refers to it as whiteness because it is undefined. It is something just like the color white is something that any color can come out of it. It's not defined in a certain color. The same thing is the root of everything is before it was defined into different levels. So how could you reconcile this? And so basically the Alter Rebbe is going to say that it really depends where you're talking, depends what the root, what you're looking at. Because in every attribute, you can see it the way it is, the way you perceive it. You can see it the way in a deeper sense. I mean, take for example, to understand this, just an analogy perhaps. When you look at a painting, look at a beautiful painting, a piece of art. You can have a child looking at a piece of art and he sees, oh wow, that's beautiful color. Oh, I love the color blue. I love the color red. And he sees the very limited things what he sees. You get another person, a child is already grown. He sees a human being. He sees an animal. He sees things. He says, oh, I see a man. I see a baby. I see an animal. And the more the deeper you look at it, a person that understands a little more in the art he sees life. He sees how the artist brings out life. You can see deeper. You can see a message that the artist is trying to convey with this art. So there's all different levels. So perhaps this is just an example to understand what he's saying. The mitzvahs that Hashem brought to this world, those are the commandments. He calls it the Ivorim, the Malka, the organs of the king. Just like an organ, every organ draws out from the soul a different type of power. The eye draws out from the soul the power of seeing. Every organ draws out a different part. And the mitzvahs also, they represent the different parts of different organs of Hashem, so to speak. But ultimately, when you go to the root, it is rooted in the very essence of Hashem, in the whiteness, what he calls it, before it was defined into different parts. And all of this is, as we mentioned on Friday, that we need to refine those godly sparks that fell down. The vessels were shattered, as you remember. What does it mean the vessel was shattered? It was, in the beginning of creation, was a lot of energy, a godly energy, that it was too much to contain. And it was intentionally done so, that now that we have a world with vessels, which is the mitzvahs, but the vessels need to be fixed. They need to be repaired so that they can contain that godly energy, and that is through us doing the mitzvahs. We expand the vessels. This is the Olam HaTikun. That's what the Alter Rebbe continues and says, Shekol HaMitzvah is letaken ramach every ze'er anpin. The explanation is, all mitzvahs are designed to rectify the 248 organs of Za, the Ze'er Ampin, the small face, which, as you mentioned, that this refers to the 6 emotive attributes, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Al yidei hamshachas oirin soiv baruch hu b'moichin, aklulin behei chasodim ve'ei gvuris. This is by drawing the infinite Ein Sof light into the divine intellect as incorporated within the 5 attributes of kindness and the 5 attributes of severity. Immortal men too, by way of analogy, one's intellectual decisions are commonly swayed by a natural leaning to kindness or severity. So the intellect can be swayed. This is after it receives already certain definitions. But the source of it, which is before it was defined, the source of the divine intellect is the lavnunis of Kesed, the whiteness of the Keter of the crown. Which is the supreme delight and desire to draw the light below into the 248 organs of Zah. For relative to Kesed, Zah is deemed below. And then it's not enough to have the general drawing down. It is important that the drawing down should affect individual mitzvahs, individual organs. That is why every mitzvah, our entire life, is dictated by Hashem. It's not only when we go to shul. It's not only when we study Torah. Every part of our life, because every part of our life is connected with in a certain way to Hashem, and by us doing the mitzvahs in every area in life, we draw and we fix and we correct those part of the organs of Hashem, so to speak. The light drawn forth divides into 600 individual streams according to the respective levels of the mitzvahs. Going, for example, for instance, through the charity and kindly deeds, the infinite Ein Sof light is drawn into the external aspect of the vessel of the attribute of kindness of Zah. Acts of kindness draw this type of light. While through observing mitzvahs that are in the order of severity, things that we cannot do, the don'ts, the infinite light is drawn into the external aspect of severity of Zah, and so on is with mercy, is the attribute of Tiferet, and so on. Now the path and passage of the issuing light that is drawn into the external vessels of Zah is through the internal aspect of the vessels and their intellects. Just like by humans, what creates the emotions is our awareness. The deeper we are aware of something, we are able to develop a deeper emotions to this thing. And there's two types of emotions, which are, in terms of a Jew's service, awe and love, either intellectually generated or innate. You have emotions that is intellectually generated when you understand and you contemplate and you work really hard to study the depth of the Torah and the greatness of Hashem. Or there's also the natural love that you have. Not that we have it in our DNA. And that is called the Sheshem Chinas Meichin de Katnas Vegadlus. These attributes correspond in terms of supernal Sephiros to the major and minor divine intellect. The major intellect is the major is the one, the intellectual love, and the minor is the natural love, the innate love. And this, says the Alter Rebbe, is the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, he begged Hashem to come into the land of Israel. And the Talmud, the Gemara discusses it. Why did he so much want to go to Israel? He wanted to enjoy the fruits. That's what he needs. Moses, he was an accomplished leader. He had everything. He reached the levels of Nun Bo, the 50th level, which talks in the Kabbalah, the highest levels. So why did he insist to go in? He wanted to fulfill certain mitzvahs. Those mitzvahs, he was not obligated. So he was not obligated, so he didn't have to do them. But the answer is Moshe Rabbeinu didn't care was obligated or not. He wanted that those mitzvahs should be fulfilled. Why? Because the mitzvahs affect the physical world and fulfill Hashem's will. And there are certain mitzvahs that can only be fulfilled in Israel, and that is why he wanted to go into the land of Israel. That says the Alter Rebbe Velazeh, Bikish Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom Me'oid L'kayim HaMitzvahs Ma'asiyos Hatluyos Ba'oretz. This is the reason why Moses' fervent plea to fulfill the active mitzvahs that are contingent on the land. Certain mitzvahs that can be fulfilled only in the Holy Land. And why is that? Shein tachlis ha'ishtalshelus. For these practical mitzvahs are the ultimate purpose of the ishtalshelut. Ishtalshelut, as I mentioned many times, is the chain-like descent, the stages of progressive self-screening, the ishtalshelut of drawing down the godly light into this world. That was the whole purpose. Lehamshich oir ein soif baruch hu, levarer hakelim dezeir ampin debriya yetzir asir, to call forth the infinite ein sof light in order to refine the vessels of Zah, of Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, the three lower levels of the world. Shebohein, hein, arapach nitzoitzim, in which are located the 288 sparks that we mentioned that was shattered and located and they're dropped into these worlds. And how do you draw down the light of Hashem? Is through doing the Torah mitzvahs, the Torah mitzvahs, ma'asiyos, shebabri yitzira siya dafka. And this refinement is affected exclusively through the Torah and Torah study and mitzvahs requiring action and bria and tzira and asiya. That's why he wanted to go in there. But in any case, what we learned, he spoke about the specialty of the prayer. The prayer has something that it affects the person connects with Hashem and it affects the physical world. And he brings, as the Alter Rebbe will bring on later, that in today's day and age, prayer is most important. Even though in the previous generations, in the earlier generations of the Talmud, the Mishnah, they didn't pray for so long. In the beginning, they just had the Shema, they said the Shema, they said a few prayers. Why wasn't it necessary then? So the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, because then people were more naturally inclined to connect to Hashem. It didn't take them so long to work and finding their connection. It was their nature, they felt the connection with Hashem. So it didn't take much. I mean, just like sometimes you have healthy children, mentally, emotionally, that you don't have to guide them every step of their way, what type of feeling to feel. They're naturally, they go along with the flow. Then sometimes if people who are challenged, special needs children, sometimes you have to train them. You have to train every type of feeling, how to feel, how to connect, and how to say, and how to smile, and how to speak. So it's not natural, you have to work on it. We are challenged in that sense. To sense the spiritual connection with Hashem, it takes much, much longer by us. So that is why it is important to focus on that, on the prayer, to be able to develop a deeper feeling with Hashem. That's the end of yesterday's lesson. Now we're going to continue to today's lesson, Sunday, the third day of Kislev. Continues the Alter Rebbe now to point out that in a way, there is something special about the mitzvah that is greater than prayer and the Torah study. Continues the Alter Rebbe and says, "Vehine lekiyum mitzvah." To perform a mitzvah that cannot be delegated to another, one forgoes Torah study. And even the study of Ma'aseh Merkava, the sublime Kabbalistic mysteries of the celestial chariot. So the fact that we know that the law is that if there is a mitzvah that has to be done and no one else can do it, You are in the middle of prayer. You're in the middle of studying Torah, no matter what level of Torah. You have to stop the Torah study. You have to stop the prayer and go do the mitzvah if no one else can do it. What does it tell you? It tells you what is more important. So in a sense that the prayer, the mitzvah has in a way that it's more important. And we'll soon explain. So and beyond question, one forgoes prayer, which is the state of intellect and intellectually generated awe and love. And what is the reason? As we noted above, the reason is, as we have noted, that what? That the mitzvahs affect, by doing the mitzvah, we bring the godliness into the lowest levels. So even though we mentioned that prayer also changes the physical world, but it's not like the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the God's commandment that brings down godliness into the actual physical world. And the Alter Rebbe is going to elaborate on it. Another thing, says the Alter Rebbe, why mitzvahs are considered higher than the other ways of serving Hashem. And that is going to say that when you do the mitzvahs, it is not just an emotional attachment. Because an emotional attachment, Alter Rebbe is going to explain it, no matter how great you are and how deep you are, at the end of the day, it is the way you are able to perceive and understand the emotions, the way you are able to connect, the way you feel, the way you perceive. And it's very far, far away from the actual level of godliness. And we'll explain in a minute. Says the Alter Rebbe, shebe'emes me'oid godla v'gova ma'elas hamitzvos ma'asiyos v'chein limudam al malas hameichem she'intchilu rechim l'sichlim. In addition, indeed, the standing of the practical mitzvahs and their study far transcend the standing of intellect, meaning intellectually generated awe and love. And he says, the mitzvahs, this is the explanation, the mitzvahs requiring action are superior in the performance and in the study of the laws, not only because they fulfill the ultimate purpose of creation through the extraction of the sparks, but also because they bond the soul with God. The mitzvahs bond the soul with God more than any type of emotions that you may feel. And the Alter Rebbe goes to elaborate and says, for though the verse declares and to cleave to him, meaning through cleaving through his attributes, his midos. So the Torah does say that one needs to cleave to God by cleaving to his attributes. It says, just like he is kind, you too should be kind. That's how you cleave to Hashem. So the Alter Rebbe is going to say that no matter how much you cleave to the attributes of Hashem, you only cleave to the existence of the attributes, not to the essence of the attributes. What does that mean? You can only perceive the existence of Hashem, not the essence of Hashem, even the attributes of Hashem. Just like in the soul of a person, the soul of a human being. Do you see the soul? Do you know what the soul is? You don't know what the soul is. You know the existence of the soul because you are alive. You feel that there's a soul, that is there. But what is the soul? You don't know. You know the existence of the soul. You don't know the essence of the soul. The midos of Hashem, the highest supernal attributes, you cannot cleave to them themselves. You can only cleave to the existence of it, not to the essence of it. And it'll bring example from Avraham Avinu. So he says, still one does not cleave to the essence, the mehut, of the supernal attributes, but only to the externality of their existence, the metzius of them. And it brings an example of Avraham Avinu, of Abraham, as it is written, and I am dust and ashes. Abraham said that when he was begging Hashem to spare Sodom and Gomorrah. And he asked Hashem, please, I know I'm but dust and ashes, but still I beg you. This was the kindness of Abraham. What does it mean, I'm dust and ashes? Simple understanding is that I could have been dust and ashes by the fire that I was thrown in, or by the wars that I fought with the kings and you saved me. It could have been the dust. But the Alter Rebbe brought from his teacher, the Mezucha Magid, and he said, and Avraham Avinu said, I'm but dust and ashes. What he's saying is that his kindness is like dust and ashes. What does it mean? Avraham was the epitome of kindness. He didn't live for himself at all. Everything, his entire life was kindness, giving, just what he needed for himself. Everything else is giving to the good, giving to the bad, to everyone, just to give. Kindness. To the point that the attribute of chesed complained to Hashem and says, ever since Avram came to this world, I am jobless. He is the attributes of kindness. Yet Avram says, my feelings, my emotions of kindness, compared to the true attribute of kindness, is like the ashes, dust and ashes, compared to what it was before. What does it mean? Take a tree, for example. A beautiful tree that grows fruit. It is made out of different elements: fire, air, and water, and dust, and earth. What happened when you burn the tree? Everything is reduced to the ashes, to the essence. The essence remains the ashes. So the whole, take a piece of furniture, the same thing. The piece of furniture represents a beautiful piece of art, represents something is useful, but then if it's burned, the same thing is burned. The essence is there, the ashes, but my kindness, he says, compared to the true kindness, is like the ashes compared to the tree. That's what he's saying. So basically what Alter Rebbe is saying, that our connecting to Hashem's attributes, no one should fool himself that he can really connect to God's attributes. You connect to only the way you are able to perceive in your understanding. Another metaphor that I heard was also from a king was asking two people to bring him a cup of water. One of them understands the greatness of the king, and he becomes so excited and so emotional because he realizes the greatness of the king. And he takes the cup of water and he comes. But by the time he reaches to the king, he loses himself, he faints, and then he spills the water. The other person is a simple person, doesn't understand much. The king asks him a cup of water, he takes the cup of water and brings it to the king. So that person, which person really achieved what the king wanted, is the simple person. He did what the king's will, not his will. The other person, in his own way, is understanding in his emotions. He really understands a great deal of what a king is. So this is what Alter Rebbe is going to say, the difference between our emotional connection to Hashem and doing the mitzvah. This is all the more true with regard to the infinite Ein Sof light, for no thought can apprehend him. In his radiance, or the diffusion of the life force issuing from him. One can only grasp his existence, but he gives life to all, but not his essence. Not only we cannot understand, even the angels above cannot comprehend it. This applies even to the supernal beings, of whose praise it is written, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Holy means elevated, aloof, something that we don't understand. Even the angels don't understand. Who does grasp something? He says those emanated in the world of Atzilus, they do grasp something. Only emanated effects can conceive their cause. According to the order recorded in Eitz Chaim concerning the investment of the visages, the partsufim, and this is certain levels in the world of Atzilut, which is the world of emanation. There, the beings there are able to perceive something, but not the neshamas that are in Atzilus. Avaloi benivroim, not in the case of created beings, afilu beneshamas Atzilus, not even the souls of Atzilus. And that is why it says, by Moshe Rabbeinu, it says Moses was not able to understand, to perceive the greatness, the inner part of Hashem. Thus it is written regarding Moses, you will see my hind part, an external manifestation of the mere existence, the metzius of divinity, but not the essence and mahut. So that's what the Alter Rebbe concludes today. And tomorrow the Alter Rebbe is going to say about the difference. What is the difference by the mitzvahs? Now, when you do the mitzvah, you are connected with the essence of Hashem, and that, stay tuned for tomorrow, God willing. We shall see you, Bezat Hashem. All the best.